Welcome back, everyone. Now that we have gone through the basics of the selectors, element classes, IDs, descendants, and even pseudo classes, now we are moving into advanced selectors. So, in this section, we will explore more powerful ways to target elements in CSS. These selectors allow us to be extremely precise, matching elements based on attributes, their position in the DOM, or even relationships to other elements. Why this is important? Because as web pages become more complex, we need smarter ways to style specific parts without cluttering our code or adding unnecessary classes and IDs. So think of advanced selectors as your toolbox for fine-tune control. Um, by the end of this section, you will actually know to style elements in ways that are much harder or even impossible using only the basic selectors. So to start with, let's look at universal and multiple selectors. First, the universal selector. This one is written as an asterisk and it matches every single element on the web page. So think of it as a catch-all rule. If you don't specify an element name, the universal selector applies styles everywhere. For example, you could quickly set the font or margin for all elements at once. Next, the multiple selector. Instead of writing separate rules for each element, we can group them together by separating the selectors with a comma. For example, in the code on the right, instead of writing one rule for the unordered list and another for the ordered list, we combine them both unordered and ordered list, so they share the same styles. This makes your CSS much cleaner and avoids repeating the same declaration again and again. So just a quick question. If I write the uh, a paragraph element, a header 1 and header 2 element, what will happen? So yes, all paragraphs heading 1 and heading 2 elements will display in red. So the child selector is written using a greater than sign. It matches elements that are direct children of another element. For example, if we write div is greater than p, it will only apply styles to paragraphs that are immediate children of a div class, div element. So this is different from the descendant selector we saw earlier, where a space between selectors matches all nested elements no matter how deep they are. With the child selector, we are being more strict. It has to be the parent and its direct child. So think of it like this: the descendant selector looks at the entire family tree, including grandchildren, great grandchildren, and so on. But the child selector only looks at the immediate son or daughter. So, quick check, if I write unordered list is greater than list, which element will it match? Yes, only the list item that are direct children of the unordered list, not any nested ones inside another list. Now, let's look at a practical example of the child selector in action. Here we have two rules written. The PM background color yellow. This is the descendant selector, so it will style any M that's inside a P, no matter how deeply nested. And then the P is greater than M, background color is green. This is the child selector. So it will only style an M that is a direct child of a paragraph element. So in the HTML code, notice that the word neo is inside a strong tag, which itself is inside the paragraph tag. This means the M for neo is actually a grandchild of the paragraph, not a direct child. So the descendant selector matches it, but the child selector does not. On the other hand, the word one is directly inside the paragraph, so that makes it a direct child. So both descendant selector and the child selector apply, but the child selector rule gives it the green background. So here's the key takeaway. Descendant selector reach all levels of children, while child selector only work for direct children. So you can see this clearly in the output. Neo is yellow, but one is green. Let's now focus on how we can specifically target list items with CSS. First, the simplest one, using just list as a selector. This matches all list items no matter where they are, whether inside an ordered list or an unordered list. And next, we can be more specific. Ordered list. This is a descendant selector. It matches any list that is inside an ordered list. Even if it's nested several level deep, for example, if you had an ordered list and inside it unordered list with more lists, those nested ones would also be matched. Finally, we have the child selector. Ordered list is greater than list. This one is stricter. If only it only matches the list elements that are direct children of the ordered list. So if the list item is nested inside another list, it won't be selected here. So to summarize, list, all list item, ordered list, all list item inside an ordered list and at any level, and ordered list greater than list only the top level list item that is directly belong to an ordered list. Now, sibling selectors. Sibling elements are those that share the same parent. For example, multiple paragraph tags inside the same divisions are sibling. The general sibling selector uses a tilde between two selectors. It matches the second element if it comes after the first and both share the same parent. For example, header 2 and tilde paragraph color is blue. It will mean that all paragraph element after an header 2 in the same parent will turn blue, even if other elements are in between. So in this example, the header 1 and the paragraph element are the children of the body, which makes them the siblings. So the CSS rule, header 1 tilde paragraph border top is 1 pixel, solid gray. So this style, it applies to all the paragraph elements after the header 1. So both paragraphs below the heading get a gray top border because they are general siblings of the header 1, and this shows how the general sibling selector works. The adjacent sibling selector is written using a plus sign between two selectors. It only applies a style to an element that comes immediately after another element, and both must share the same parent. In this example, header 1 plus P means select the paragraph that comes directly after the header 1. So here only the first paragraph right after the heading gets the orange top border. The second paragraph does not because it's not immediately next to the header 1. Now let's move on to combinators and attribute selectors. First, the combinators. These are special selectors that define the relationship between elements. We have already seen examples of them, like the descendant selectors, the child selectors, and the adjacent sibling selectors, and the general sibling selector. So each one tells us how elements are connected in the HTML structure. Now we have the attribute selector. This lets us style element based on their attribute. For example, our target will match all anchor tags that have a target attribute. So if we want to be more specific, a and target equal to blank will, so like this, it will only match links that open in a new tab. So combinators describe relationships between elements while the attribute selectors focus on element attributes and their values. Now let's look at some of the most common attribute selector comparators. The first one is the equal sign. It matches elements when the attribute has an exact value. For example, target equal to blank will select only those anchor tags that open in a new tab. Next is the tilde equals. This checks if an attribute contains a whole word. For example, alt tilde equals sad, which will match an image whose alt text contains the separate word sad. And finally, we have the caret equal. Um, this means when an attribute begins with a certain value, for instance, class, caret equal nav will select any element where the class starts with nav, like nav level 0 or navigation item. So these comparators give us more precision and flexibility when styling elements based on their attributes. Next, let's talk about the pseudo element selector. A pseudo element is written with two colons followed by the pseudo element name. So, unlike pseudo classes that targets element states, uh, pseudo elements let us style specific parts of an element. For example, we can style just the first line or the first letter of a paragraph using selectors like two colons first line or two colons first letter. We can also style the portion of a text a user selects with two colons the selection. Pseudo elements also let us insert extra content into a page without actually adding it in HTML. For example, using double or two colon before or two colon after, we can add decorative icons, quotation marks, or extra text before or after an specific element. So pseudo elements give us fine-grained control over how different parts of content are displayed without actually changing the HTML. Now let's look at some common pseudo element selector. The after selector lets us add content after an element. For example, list pseudo element after the content is greater than will automatically add a greater than symbol after every list item. The before selector does the opposite. It adds content before an element. The first line selectors apply styles to the first line of text inside a block element, for example, a paragraph. The first letter selector targets only the first letter of a block, and it will, if you select the style to be font size 2000, it will make each of the first letter of the selected or specified blocks like a paragraph to be bigger. For example, we see in a newspaper. And finally, the selection, it lets us style the text a user highlights. So if we use selection, the selected text will glow yellow instead of the default blue. So these pseudo elements are really useful for fine-tuning text presentation or adding decorative effects without editing the actual HTML. So that's all for section 4.3. Um, I will see you all in section 4.4.